Imagine you could buy in a shop or at McDonald's or wherever you buy a coffee with your mobile phone. We've had things like that. But imagine people in Africa who don't even have a bank account, who just have a mobile phone, maybe not a real house, but a phone, would be able to pay with real money in their market, from client to salesperson. That could change the world. And I'm now looking forward to talking to Johann Gevers, who comes up with that, which is called Monetas. Please welcome Johann Gevers. We'll go together on the stage. This microphone is for you a little later. Go ahead.
Danke. Welche Seite ziehst du vor?
Anyway, this is fine. You're closer to the flip chart that way.
Gut.
So if you have a question, you're welcome to ask it. And in case Johann wants to draw something to make it more clear, we have that flip chart. So we may use that. How may I use Monetas to buy my cup of coffee at the vendor over there? How would that work?
So if the vendor is already part of our system, it's extremely simple. You would go to the coffee stand. He would use his mobile phone or his terminal that runs our software, and it would generate a QR code. Like he would type in whatever you ordered, the coffee, the cake. It generates a QR code, and then I take my phone, or you take your phone, and you just scan the QR code, and then it'll show on the screen the recipient, in other words, the coffee shop, and the amount. You check that it's correct, and then you say slide, and it's paid. Instant.
How does Monetas allow money transfers to poor people in America, Europe, or Africa?
So again, it's all the different kinds of transactions that are simple payment transactions. Very simple. If both parties, suppose that I grew up in Uganda, and then I moved to a developed country like the United States or Germany, and I make a lot of money, and I want to send some of that money home to my family. All they need is a smartphone. They download the software for free, takes a few seconds. I have the software where I am in Germany or the United States, and then I load money into my phone, and I click the recipient. Let's say it's my brother or my sister or my mother. I type in the recipient's name and the amount that I want to send, like 100 euros, and I click send, and they receive it a fraction of a second later.
Now, what do we usually do if you want to send money to someone who maybe doesn't have a bank account? All I know is Western Union. And they want, how much is that? It's 10 euro flat if I walk into a shop. It's 5 euro flat if I do it online. And if I send 100 euro, that's 5%. If I send 500 euro, that's 1%. What's the difference between the cost of your Monetas and something like PayPal or Western Union?
That's a great question. In our system, first of all, just to say what the state of the industry is today, the average cost across the world for these international transfers is more than 8%. And that includes, that's the average. So in developed countries, like you mentioned, it's a little bit cheaper. But in less developed countries, like Africa, it's a lot more expensive. So in African countries, like Nigeria, it's 14%. So
just to send money across the border, the bank keeps 14%.
Yeah. So if you go and you want to send money from, let's say, Germany to your family in Nigeria, and you send 100 euros, 14 euros is taken off, and they only receive 86 euros. Whereas in our system, you drop that cost to less than 1%. In fact, it's a lot less than 1%, because our maximum fee is 0.9%, but it's got a cap. The maximum transaction fee in our system is 30 cents. And you reach that cap when you come to about 30 euros. So as soon as the amount is above 30 euros, You reach that cap, it's limited to 30 cents, and then the percentage fee is actually smaller and smaller. For example, if you send 1,000 euros, it still only costs 30 cents. So the cost is 0.03%. So it's way more, way cheaper than existing systems. Now,
Even in Germany, not everyone has a bank account. Until recently, bank could decline a bank account to someone who they didn't want to deal with. Recently, a law says that everyone is entitled to a bank account. Now, who qualifies for a Monetas account? So many people in Africa, who knows who they are, what they do, and how honest they are? You give them something like an account on their phone?
in our system, everybody has access. The only requirement you have to be part of our system is to download the software. The software is free. So if you have a Google Android phone, you just go to the Google App Store, you download the software for free. You have it a few seconds later. If you have an Apple iPhone, you go to the Apple iPhone Store and you download the software. And that's all you need. You don't need to fill out an application at a bank. You don't need to have a credit record. You don't need to spend 2 months to prove that your business is low risk and all those things. You just download the software and you're in business immediately with no bank account, no lawyer required.
How do I put money on my Monetas account so that I can go out and pay? Of course, it's a debit card. I can only spend the money that I've put onto the account before. How do I do that?
Yes. So one thing that I want to just differentiate, we are very used today that everything runs across an account, like a bank account or a credit card account. Our system does not have accounts. So the best analogy to how our system works is it's like your leather wallet in your pocket. The money is in your wallet in your pocket. It's not with some third party, not some intermediary that has your money. So we have a digital equivalent of a leather wallet. This is also different than the other mobile systems that are available in the world today, which are just access to your bank account from your mobile phone. So it's still an account system. And even though you use your mobile phone for it, the bank still has your money. They still control whether you can do the transaction. Our system does not have a bank account, does not have an account with Monetas either. We just make the software that enables people to have the money in their own mobile wallet that is not an account. So it's like they have the money literally in there, but it's backed up in the cloud. So if you lose your phone or something goes wrong, you can download the backup and reinstall it on a new phone.
How does money arrive in my Monetas wallet? I have money on my bank account, I put it on my Monetas wallet, I just do a transfer?
Yes.
It's like putting money on my debit card or sending money. Yeah.
So if you have a bank account, then you can link it to the Monetas wallet and you can transfer money from your bank account into the Monetas wallet. But if you don't have a bank account, you go to an exchanger. Now, exchangers have been around for thousands of years. Basically, if you have two different kinds of assets, like two different currencies, or one person has potatoes and the other one has oranges, you go to an exchanger, a market, who says, okay, I'll take your potatoes and I'll give you apples in return. Or I will take your euros and I'll give you Japanese yen in return. So you go to these exchange networks are all over the world. There's millions of them. Western Union is just one example of an exchanger network. So with our system, we do partnerships with these exchange networks. So if you're a user and you don't have a bank account, but you have cash, or maybe if you're in the middle of Africa and you don't even have cash, you take your goat and the potatoes, whatever you have that you want to use, you take it to an exchanger, and he then loads money into your wallet in the mobile phone system, in the Monetas system. And then you can use this to do business with anyone in the world.
You've done first trials in Tunisia. What have you tried and how did it work?
So we started a pilot in Tunisia last year in October, and we've completed that pilot. The pilot involved play money, and now we are going to the next phase to certify the system for real money. And as you know, if you roll out something across the whole country and it involves the national currency and the central bank, you have to be very sure that the system works perfectly. You need to meet certain security requirements and you need to be certified. So this process takes some time. We expect that we'll be ready with that by the first quarter of next year. But that's for nationwide rollouts. We are now looking at smaller rollouts, which are commercial, non-government rollouts. For example, if you have a town that has a transport system and it's a small closed economy, then you can use our system for that, and we expect to roll out those first ones this year sometime, and then go countrywide with a number of countries in Africa next year, starting in early next year. In fact, Tunisia was the first one that we started working with. We now have more than a dozen additional countries in Africa with a total population of over 300 million people. And we're still working on additional partnerships in Africa. Essentially, we want to cover the whole continent of Africa by the end of this year, early next year. And then from Africa, we plan to move further into Asia and South America, because that's where people do not have bank accounts. The majority of them are cut off from the global economy. In Africa, it's 80%. In South America, it's 65%. In Asia, it's 60% that do not have access to the formal financial system. So they're very limited in building wealth and integrating with the world economy. Our system gives them an opportunity to integrate with the world economy and thereby to generate wealth.
How does Monetas improve payments and the economy and thus the development of societies in Africa?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that, because when we talked about global remittances, there was a statistic that I wanted to mention. Global remittances are a total of $600 billion a year. That's just counting formal remittances. If you include informal remittances, it's over $1 trillion a year. And if you calculate the amount of fees, it's over $50 billion a year that go to companies like Western Union and so on. And those do not go to the people that really need it. So again, to use the example of somebody in a rich country sends money to a family or friend in a poor country, for every $100 they send, only about $91 arrive on average across the world. But in Africa, even less than that arrives, which means the money is sent, but a lot of that money does not reach the people that need it. It goes into the pockets of companies like Western Union that are not in those recipient countries. So that's a total of $50 billion a year in fees. That's more, and so if you switch to a system like what we are doing and what some other people are doing, where you can cut the cost to less than 1%, that means that it's a reduction in fees of over $40 billion a year. Now, reducing the fees by $40 billion a year, which means over $40 billion of extra money reaches the people that it's intended for, the people that really need it in those poor countries. That is more than the entire world's foreign aid put together. So in other words, if you switch to a system with low transaction fees, you are helping the world more than all the world's foreign aid combined. So that's one example how our system makes a difference. But more importantly, so that's just direct aid. But more importantly, when people have access to the global economy, in our system, it's not just simple payments. You can do the entire spectrum of financial instruments and global trade. You can do futures and options and any type of contract. So this means that somebody in Africa who now is reduced to just working with cash, which means a small economy of face-to-face transactions. And I have to mention there, when people only have cash and they don't have a safe place to store that cash, the statistic for Africa is they lose an average of between 15 and 25% of their money every year. That's a horrendous tax. So they need a safe alternative, a system, for example, like what we're building, where they can store their money in a safe way. They don't lose it, it's not stolen. So just that by itself also is an additional boost. But the most important thing is they are connected with the global economy. So instead of just having face-to-face trades, if I'm a businessman in the middle of Africa and I need something for my business, I can Google it on the phone, and using the Monetas system, I can order it from China, from somebody I've never met and I don't trust, because our system guarantees the integrity of the transactions. In other words, it's not possible to steal money with using our system. I can explain why if you're interested. But yes, that connects people with the global economy, which means their ability to generate wealth is dramatically improved. so they can build wealth in their countries and thereby improve all their outcomes, health, education, and all the rest.
People can get going, working, and selling services which they couldn't sell before,
Exactly.
just because they have that new currency. How do you think we get to that technical thing like, I put an app on my phone and you believe that I trust that app? You know, do I know who hacks it? We'll come to that. But how do you think Monetas will change the banking business? Because you're not only about simple people exchanging money for a salad or some fruit. There are also all kind of financial products to be traded with Monetas. How do you think
Exactly.
banks will react to that?
This is an excellent question. So, I mean, when you look at the face, just on the surface, it seems like we would make banks irrelevant, but that's not true. When you think about what do banks really offer, well, there's a couple of things. The primary thing they offer is trust. So they have a customer relationship, the customers trust them, and they offer specialized products like insurance products and savings products and investment products. The transaction business is really a loss leader. In today's world, banks do not make money on transactions. There's a few exceptions, but generally they don't make money on transactions. It's too expensive. One of the reasons they don't make money with transactions is because the bank is an intermediary, and in the banking model where you have an account with the bank, they have your money. So of course, when some other person, some third party has your money, there's the risk that they will abuse that position and they'll steal your money or abuse it in some way. So government regulators put in place a lot of compliance procedures to prevent abuse. And those compliance procedures are just getting worse and worse every year. It costs the banks a lot of money to stay in compliance, which means the transaction business is generally not profitable anymore. Now, in our system, there's no account. You have the money in your own digital wallet, which means that compliance is not necessary anymore, because the compliance is mostly there to protect you against a third party taking your money. But if the money is in your own pocket, you don't need that whole compliance overhead. So if you use our system, if the bank uses our technology on the back end, then the transactions are done automatically in our system. They can cut the cost of that, they can cut out the compliance costs, and they can focus on what's really important to them, namely interesting applications like insurance products, savings and investment products, and the trust relationship. For example, young people are very technology comfortable, so they may decide not to use a bank. But most of the people still prefer to trust a bank. For example, they'll say, well, what happens if I lose my phone? Or what happens if I forget my password? And that's where a bank can offer a valuable service. It's a trusted entity, and they can go to the bank and say, sorry, please remind me how to do this. So a lot of people will still use banks for those services. So I do not see banks disappearing in the next 20 years. If you look at the development of technology, Amazon was formed in 1995, 21 years ago. We still have bookstores today in spite of Amazon. And there's many examples of that. So yes, Amazon has made a lot of bookstores unnecessary, but they are still bookstores. So basically the message for financial institutions is, see the writing on the wall, adapt, use these new technologies, integrate them into your processes, and if you do so quickly, then not only can you survive, you can actually take market shares from your competitors, and you can gain new customers and build your business. What happens in 20 years, we don't know. But the next 20 years is long enough. That's longer than what most people plan anyway. So for the next 20 years, banks are still in a good position.
What will you decentralize?
That comes back to the fact that we don't hold any money. Monetas only produces the software. We offer the software to other parties, for example, financial institutions or telecom companies. But the customer has the money in their own pocket. So that's the core decentralization. Instead of having to trust a centralized third party, like a bank, and then you have a situation, for example, what happened in Cyprus a few years ago, about 2 years ago. If you're a responsible person who saves up across your life for your old age, let's say you've saved up for 30 years and you've got a little nest egg together for your retirement, And then one nice day you wake up and there's an announcement that the bank has decided to take 40% of your money, or the government has decided to take 40% of your money, and you have no control over that. You are powerless to change that. In our system, that's not possible, because the bank does not hold your money. The government does not hold your money. You hold your money. You decide what to do with the money. So that's a fundamental decentralization that's very important. It's part of our mission to give people, to give individuals control back, to give them back control over their own money, which is an important equalization in the power makeup of the world. At the moment, it's imbalanced. We have a few highly concentrated big entities that control our lives, and we are powerless. The effect of our technology is that it democratizes finance, so people get more power again, and that's more balanced.
How does Monetas work technically? How does my money get to the guy at the coffee shop? And how come that's safe and no one can hack it? And it can be cheated? How do you control that?
The key to it is that it requires your permission. We've built a system that no transaction happens unless you have first authorized the transaction. And specifically how it works is it uses digital signatures, cryptographic signatures. These are virtually impossible to hack. In other words, it's not possible for someone to sign on your behalf if you did not authorize it. They are much more secure than conventional paper and ink signatures. So how it works physically is, suppose you have a mobile phone, you have our software, I have a mobile phone with our software, and I want to send you some money. I then go in the software, I'll say, I want to send $100 to George, and I sign it electronically. Now, this all happens in the background. I'm explaining it, and it takes a long time to explain it. But the actual process just takes a fraction of a second. So I just type in $100, I type in your name, and then I say, send. But what happens in the background, it cryptographically signs that transaction, and then you get a message that says, Johann wants to send you $100. Mm-hmm. Do you accept this transfer? So George then has to go on his phone and sign that he accepts it, and he signs again with his digital signature. So afterwards, he cannot claim that he didn't receive it because he signed for it. So nothing happens until both parties, the sender and the receiver, have signed. So you can go to a court of law and you can prove that both parties agreed to the transaction. Because our platform is essentially a smart contracting platform. Payments are just a special case of contracts. But we can do the full range of contracts. So simple payments as well as sophisticated financial instruments like futures and options and so on. So basically, to answer the question, why can you not be cheated? Because you first have to explicitly agree. Nobody can take money out of your wallet without you first agreeing to it. And there's additional security measures we have. I mean, these are software security, but as you know, software is not perfect. Nothing is perfect. So we have additional security layers. For example, hardware keys. So not just do you have to sign it physically, cryptographically on your phone, but you also have to have a hardware key. Now, let me just clarify. This is not required for every transaction. There'll be different layers. So if you want to just go to the coffee shop, and let's say you can set a limit of less than $40. You don't need a password. It just goes through, so it's convenient. You just do little transactions. You just hold your phone, boom, the transaction is done in a split second. But if it's a bigger transaction, then it requires a password, so you type in your password. And if it's a very big transaction, like let's say you want to send $100,000 somewhere, then not just does it require your password, it also requires a physical key, like a USB key, for example. And if you're a bank or an enterprise and you have billions of dollars, then you need even more security. Then we have split keys. So let's say 5 people get a piece of the password, and at least 3 of those people, 3 of the 5, have to be present and enter the correct password, otherwise the transaction does not happen. And they also get physical keys, and at least 3 out of the 5 keys have to be present, otherwise there's no transaction. This is how it works today with banks that have a bank vault with a lot of money in it. You have multiple keys, and a minimum number of keys have to be present, otherwise you cannot open the safe.
How does Monetas protect my privacy, our company's secrets on one hand, on the other hand, disclose illegal arms, drugs, human trafficking to police authorities?
That's an excellent question, and the solution to this is very, very difficult. There's no perfect solution today. And the reason is we need both. We need transparency and we need privacy. That's just how society works. A completely transparent society with no privacy is a police state. But a society where you have anonymity means that there's no accountability, so people can do bad things and there's no way to find them. So we need a bit of both. And the healthy balance in a civilized, free society is that you have the presumption of innocence. In other words, citizens are presumed to be innocent until there's evidence that they are guilty of something. An unhealthy society is the other way around. You assume that people are guilty until they prove they're innocent. Now that's a police state. And it's very sad, unfortunately, in the world today that we are moving to the opposite. So instead of being innocent until proven guilty, we assume everybody is guilty until they're innocent. So we have universal surveillance, which is very unhealthy. And we need to do things to help move in the opposite direction, to move to where we were.
Any one of you has a question? Things you'd like to know? I see a few hands. This is not going to be boring.
Hello and thank you. I want to ask if I think the big problem in this process is part you want to convert old money to digital money which reside in my digital wallet. Does your solution cover this part or no? This is going to through the traditional ways.
Our solution doesn't cover it explicitly. In other words, the exchange happens outside of our system, but it happens through exchangers. So if you need money in our system, you go to an exchanger, you take your cash there, and they convert it into our system. But it's a very easy, simple, one-step process.
Actually, I could go to any friend who has a Monetas account, and rather than selling him a melon, I could sell him money and say, you know, here's money, put it on my Monetas.
Exactly.
Don't even need an exchanger.
Exactly, and maybe just one more thing about that. Initially, a lot of those exchanges will happen because our system is not widely distributed yet. So you'll still need cash for certain things. But the more people adopt our system, the more you can just stay inside the system because you can pay everywhere with it. And that's the most efficient way. So ultimately, very few of those exchanges will be necessary.
While you were talking, I was trying to download the app you were talking about. And I found only Dun & Bradstreet thing about Monetas. Is your product to be under this name? Is it an issue?
There'll be both. We are primarily a business-to-business company, not a business-to-consumer company. So we are doing partnerships with various types of companies like telecom companies or post office, retail chains and banks. And they use our software and they brand it under their own name, co-branded with Powered by Monetas. So that's the primary way that we will market the software. But it's not really available yet today. It works. It's been working since last year. But as I mentioned, we have to go through this compliance process to certify the software and make sure. I mean, if this was just a gaming app, then we would already have been in the market the middle of last year. But this is what a national economy can run on. You can run stock markets on this. So the level of proof and testing is much higher. And if you're familiar with banking software, it sometimes takes years for them to get certified. We are pushing that process to do it much faster than that, but it still takes a certain amount of time.
Thank you.
I think it's a great invention, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.